My name is Emily Johnson, and I'm 30 years old. 3 days ago, I woke up on my birthday morning to find my credit card melted in the kitchen trash and $25,000 missing from my savings account. But what happened at my birthday party that night left over 100 guests speechless when my father finally revealed why he'd been silent for 10 years. The woman who stole from me was sitting at the family table, wearing jewelry bought with my money, laughing about teaching me a lesson about being too weak. She didn't know that sometimes the quietest person in the room holds all the cards. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Now, let me tell you how my family learned that kindness isn't weakness, it's patience waiting for the perfect moment. That morning started like any other birthday, except for the acrid smell coming from my kitchen. I followed it to the trash can, and there it was. My primary credit card, melted into a twisted piece of plastic and metal. The melted plastic still smelled like betrayal. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone to check my accounts. $25,000 gone. Not transferred, not pending, just gone. I sank into a kitchen chair, staring at the screen. 3 years of saving for a house down payment vanished overnight. My credit score would tank. My position as chief accountant at Dad's company could be questioned if anyone thought I couldn't manage my own finances. I rushed to check the home security app, but the footage from last night through this morning had been deleted. Someone with the access code had covered their tracks. Only 3 people knew that code. Me, Dad, and Susan, my stepmother, who'd insisted on having it for emergencies. I started piecing together the strange events from the past week. Susan asking detailed questions about my savings goals. Amanda, my younger half-sister, suddenly interested in my banking apps, claiming she wanted to learn about financial planning, the way they'd exchange glances when I mentioned my birthday dinner reservation. My laptop showed the transaction history before it was wiped. Multiple ATM withdrawals at the maximum daily limit, wire transfers to accounts I didn't recognize, and luxury purchases at Neiman Marcus and Tiffany's, all processed between midnight and 6 a.m., while I was sleeping in my own bed, trusting my family. The kitchen felt smaller, suffocating. This wasn't just theft. It was calculated, deliberate, timed for maximum impact. They wanted me to discover this on my birthday morning, hours before the elaborate party Susan had insisted on throwing at the Crystal Palace in Seattle tonight. My phone buzzed with a text notification. The preview showed it was from Amanda, starting with, "Morning, sis. Paris is amazing. Thanks for..." I didn't need to open it to know what she was thanking me for. My stomach turned as another notification popped up. Susan calling. I let it go to voicemail, already knowing what she'd say. Something about tonight's party, peppered with false concern and barely hidden satisfaction. My phone buzzed again with another message from Amanda. I opened it, and there it was. A selfie from the Eiffel Tower. Designer sunglasses, Chanel bag, champagne in hand. The caption read, "Morning, sis. Paris is amazing. Thanks for making this trip possible. Some of us know how to actually live life instead of hoarding money like a scared little mouse." The next photo showed shopping bags from Louis Vuitton, Hermès, and Dior. "Don't worry, I'll bring you back a keychain or something cute. That's more your speed, right?" Before I could process the rage building in my chest, my phone rang. "Susan. Emily, darling." Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "Just calling to remind you about tonight. 8 you're sharp at the Crystal Palace. Everyone will be there. Your father's business partners, the extended family, even the Petersons from the country club. Oh, and do wear something appropriate. I know you prefer those modest little outfits, but this is a real celebration. Maybe buy something nice." "Oh, wait." She paused, and I could hear her smile. "Well, I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're so good at making do with less. Susan, my credit card was. Life teaches us lessons when we need them most, sweetheart. Some people are too weak to protect what's theirs. They make themselves victims by being passive little doormats. But tonight isn't about your problems. It's about family. See you at 8. She hung up before I could respond. Another text from Amanda. Mom says you might be upset about something. Don't be such a baby, Em. It's your birthday. Though I guess at 30. Still single. Still living in that tiny apartment in Bellevue. Still letting everyone walk all over you. Maybe it's more of a pity party. I set my phone down carefully, resisting the urge to throw it against the wall. They weren't even trying to hide it. They wanted me to know, wanted me to show up tonight destroyed, humiliated, unable to fight back in front of all those people. Sometimes, the best revenge is just showing up with a smile. I pulled out my laptop and started documenting everything: screenshots, transaction records, the deleted security footage logs. Then I texted the one person I needed. Michael, it's Emily Johnson. That situation we discussed. It's happening tonight. His reply was instant. Understood. Everything is ready. See you at 8. I had 5 hours to prepare. They thought they were teaching me a lesson about weakness. They had no idea what lesson they were about to learn themselves. As I sat there gathering evidence, memories flooded back of how I'd become the family doormat. It started the day Susan married Dad 10 years ago, when she introduced Amanda as the daughter who inherited the Johnson family strength. Being kind isn't weakness, but they never understood that. Every family gathering followed the same script. Amanda would demand something outrageous: a new car at 16, a gap year in Europe, startup capital for her 5th failed business venture. Dad would hesitate, and Susan would turn to me. Emily understands family sacrifice, don't you, sweetheart? She's not selfish like some people. And I'd cave every time. When Amanda crashed her 3rd car, I co-signed for the 4th, because family helps family. When Susan needed $10,000 for her charity gala that somehow never materialized, I wrote the check because refusing would be unsupportive. When they forgot my birthday 3 years running but threw Amanda elaborate parties, I smiled and said it didn't matter because making a fuss would be childish. The comparisons were constant. Amanda knows what she wants and takes it. That's real strength, Susan would announce at dinners. Poor Emily, always waiting for permission to live her own life. They mistook my restraint for weakness, my kindness for stupidity. While Amanda threw tantrums to get her way, I built my career quietly. While Susan spent Dad's money on status symbols, I saved every penny. While they performed their power plays, I watched, learned, and waited. The irony was beautiful, really. They'd spent so much time calling me weak that they never noticed Dad pulling me aside for private conversations about the company's future. They were so busy taking that they never saw what I was building. But why had Dad stayed silent all these years? That was the one piece I couldn't figure out. He watched them humiliate me, use me, dismiss me, and said nothing until 6 months ago, when everything started to change. The past 6 months had shown a dramatic escalation in their contempt. It started when Dad promoted me to chief accountant of Johnson Enterprises. Susan's reaction was immediate and vicious. William, she doesn't have the backbone for leadership, Susan announced at the family dinner celebrating my promotion. Amanda should be groomed for executive roles. She has that killer instinct Emily lacks. Amanda had laughed. Seriously, Dad? Emily can barely say no to telemarketers. How's she going to handle corporate negotiations? Dad's silence spoke louder than their words ever could. Then came the exclusions. Family business meetings moved to times when I was traveling for work. Investment decisions were made without consulting the chief accountant. Amanda started using the company credit card for personal expenses, submitting receipts directly to Susan for approval, instead of following protocol through my department. "Don't be so rigid, Emily," Susan had said when I questioned a $5,000 charge at a spa. "Family businesses run on trust, not bureaucracy, unless you don't trust your own sister." The final straw was last month's board meeting. Susan had actually suggested restructuring the finance department to reduce my stress levels. She'd prepared a whole presentation about how I was overwhelmed and too emotional for the position, recommending Amanda as co-CFO, despite her having no financial experience whatsoever. That's when I noticed something odd. Dad had started meeting with Michael Lee, our family lawyer, every Thursday privately. No Susan, no Amanda, no me. The meetings weren't on the company calendar, but I saw Michael's car in the executive parking garage like clockwork. When I asked Dad about it, he simply said, "Patience, Emily. Sometimes the best strategy is letting people reveal their true nature." I thought it was another of his cryptic business philosophies. Now, staring at my drained bank account, I was beginning to understand exactly what he meant. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, you'll understand what comes next. Before we continue, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I'm curious. Have you ever had family members mistake your kindness for weakness? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories help me realize I'm not alone in this. Some of you have asked if I regret being patient for so long. Honestly, you're about to see why patience was my greatest weapon. Now, let me tell you what happened when I walked into that birthday party. Standing outside the Crystal Palace in Seattle at 7:45 p.m., I calculated the real cost of their betrayal. 3 years of savings gone in 3 minutes of greed. $25,000 meant 1,100 hours of overtime, 36 months of skipped vacations, and countless sacrifices to build something they destroyed overnight. But the financial damage went deeper. My credit score would plummet from 780 to below 600 once the maxed-out cards hit my report. The mortgage pre-approval I'd worked toward for 5 years, gone. The investment property that would have been my retirement security, impossible now. As chief accountant, this disaster could destroy my professional reputation. How could I manage millions in company assets if I couldn't protect my own accounts? The whispers would start Monday. "Did you hear about Emily Johnson? Lost $25,000 and didn't even notice until it was gone." My phone showed 17 missed calls from the bank's fraud department, each voicemail more urgent than the last, documenting suspicious activity I couldn't report without admitting my own family had robbed me. The irony burned. I'd spent years building perfect credit only to have it torched by people who called me weak for being obsessed with financial security. Through the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see them all gathering. Dad's business partners, potential investors, everyone who mattered in our professional circle. Susan had made sure to invite them all to witness what she thought would be my humiliation. The maitre d' opened the door. "Ms. Johnson, your family is waiting in the celestial ballroom. Your father asked me to give you this." He handed me a small envelope. Inside, Dad's handwriting. "Trust the process. W." I tucked it into my purse next to the screenshots and evidence I'd gathered. If they wanted to discuss family finances in front of everyone, I'd give them exactly what they asked for. The celestial ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and 100-a-plate place settings. Over 100 guests mingled with champagne. Dad's biggest clients, board members, country club elite, and extended family I hadn't seen in years. Susan had orchestrated this perfectly, maximum witnesses for maximum humiliation. Sometimes the hardest battles are fought in evening gowns. Emily, our biggest client, Thomas Bennett, approached with his wife. "Your father speaks so highly of your work. That restructuring proposal you presented saved us $2 million last quarter." Before I could respond, Susan appeared, sliding between us like silk-wrapped steel. Yes, Emily tries so hard, doesn't she? Of course, Amanda has that natural business instinct. She doesn't need to overthink everything like some people. Mrs. Bennet looked uncomfortable. Thomas frowned slightly but said nothing. The pattern I'd ignored for years suddenly seemed so obvious. Susan systematically undermining me to anyone who mattered. Across the room, I spotted Michael Lee near the bar, briefcase at his feet. He raised his glass slightly, a signal. Everything was in place. The guest list was more than social. These were witnesses to whatever was about to unfold. Ladies and gentlemen, Susan's voice rang out, please take your seats for a special toast. The stakes couldn't be higher. If I stayed silent tonight, I'd forever be the weak daughter who let her family rob her blind. But causing a scene could destroy the business relationships Dad had spent decades building. Our competitors were here too, circling like sharks, ready to use any family drama against us. I found my assigned seat at the secondary family table, while Amanda sat at Dad's right hand at the main table. The place card next to mine read, Michael Lee, escrow. He leaned over and whispered, your father wants you to know he's proud of your restraint, but restraint and surrender aren't the same thing. The Crystal Palace's ambiance was perfect for Susan's production. Soft jazz, golden lighting that made everyone look successful, and enough space between tables for dramatic entrances and exits. I'd barely stepped into the ballroom when Amanda intercepted me at the entrance. Welcome to your party, sister. Hope you can afford the memories. Her smile was sharp as the new diamond earrings she wore. Earrings I recognized from the Tiffany's charge on my account. She air-kissed my cheeks, whispering, love the dress, Em. Target. Very you. Susan glided over in a $3,000 gown I'd seen her buy last week on the company card. Emily, darling, everyone's been asking about the birthday girl. I've been telling them how you're learning so much in your little accounting role. Chief accountant, I corrected quietly. Yes, well, titles are just words, aren't they? Amanda's been sharing her European adventure with everyone. Such initiative, taking that trip to study international business trends. She touched my arm with false concern. You really should travel more, dear, though I suppose that requires resources. The room felt like a stage, and I was the only one who hadn't received the script. Board members clustered near the bar, their wives gossiping by the windows. My Uncle James, who hadn't spoken to me since I'd refused to loan him money last year, was suddenly very interested in examining the wall art when I passed. Dad sat at the main table, silent and observing. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes tracked every movement, every interaction. He'd positioned himself with a clear view of the entire room, the CEO surveying his domain. William's been so generous with this party, Susan announced to a group of investors. Of course, some of us contribute more to the family than others. Amanda just closed a major deal in Paris, didn't you, sweetheart? Amanda laughed, champagne already flushing her cheeks. Let's just say the Johnson name opens doors when you know how to use it. I took my seat, noting how Michael had positioned his briefcase within easy reach. The leather portfolio inside contained documents I couldn't see, but the way he guarded it suggested importance. Dad stood up slowly, his movement commanding instant attention. The room began to quiet, anticipating the traditional birthday toast, but the look in his eyes promised something else entirely. Dad raised his champagne glass, but before he could speak, Amanda jumped up, grabbing the microphone from the DJ stand. Sorry, Daddy, but I just have to share. Her voice echoed through the ballroom. Paris was absolutely transformative. The shopping was incredible, she continued, projecting photos onto the ballroom's display screen from her phone. Susan stood, adding, strong women seize opportunities. Unlike some people, Amanda's eyes found mine, who hoard every penny, afraid of actually living. Susan chimed in, tag teaming. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some watched with barely hidden fascination, others looked away. Thomas Bennett's expression had turned stone-cold professional. That's quite enough. Dad's voice cut through, quiet but firm. Oh, William, Susan laughed. Don't coddle her. Some lessons cost more than others, Amanda added, her smile vicious. Enjoy it while it lasts, I said quietly, but my voice carried. The room went still. It was the first time I'd spoken publicly against them, and the shock was palpable. Amanda's face flushed darker, not from champagne, anymore. What's that supposed to mean? Amanda demanded. Nothing, just economics, I replied calmly. Susan's laugh was forced. Emily thinks she understands money. I understand theft, I said evenly. The silence that followed was deafening. Guests exchanged glances, some pulling out phones to discreetly text others. This was the drama they'd come for, even if they'd never admit it. How dare you? Susan started. Sit down, Dad commanded. Not requested, commanded. Susan's mouth opened, then closed. She'd never heard that tone from him before. Neither had I. Amanda, give me the microphone. Dad extended his hand. But Daddy, I was just... Now. She handed it over, confusion replacing confidence. The room held its collective breath. Michael Lee quietly opened his briefcase, pulling out a leather portfolio. Ladies and gentlemen, Dad began, his voice carrying the weight of authority that had built an empire. You've come to celebrate my daughter's birthday, but more importantly, you're about to witness why Johnson Enterprises has thrived for 3 generations. He looked directly at me. It's not about taking, it's about knowing when to reveal your hand. Susan grabbed her champagne glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. Amanda sank into her chair, and I sat perfectly still, finally understanding why Dad had been silent for so long. Before Dad could continue, Michael Lee stood up, his movement deliberate and professional. The entire room noticed. When the family lawyer stands at a birthday party, people pay attention. Timing is everything in law and in life, Michael said quietly as he passed my chair, documents in hand. He walked to the main table, stopping beside Dad. Mr. Johnson, shall I? Dad nodded. Not yet, Michael, but stay close. The interaction was subtle but loaded with meaning. Board members straightened in their seats. Thomas Bennett pulled out his phone, likely recording. Everyone sensed something significant was about to unfold. Emily, Michael said, making eye contact with me. That matter we discussed earlier. All the documentation is in order. Susan's voice cut through, sharp with suspicion. What documentation, William? What is this about? Business, Susan. Something you've been very interested in lately. Dad's tone was neutral, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Amanda laughed nervously. God, why is everyone being so dramatic? It's just a birthday party. Yes, Dad agreed. A birthday, a milestone, a time for gifts and revelations. Michael returned to our table, setting the portfolio between us. The leather cover bore the Johnson Enterprises logo and a label I couldn't quite read from my angle, but I noticed Susan trying desperately to see it from across the room. Mr. Lee, Thomas Bennett called out. I wasn't aware you handled family celebrations. I handle family matters, Mr. Bennett, Michael replied carefully. Sometimes those matters require proper documentation, witnesses, accountability. The word accountability hung in the air like a blade. Susan's knuckles went white. Amanda reached for her phone, probably to check her bank accounts. Shall we eat first? Dad suggested, his calm demeanor at odds with the tension. The salmon is exceptional tonight. But nobody moved toward their plates. Everyone was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Dad set down his champagne and walked to the center of the room, each step measured and deliberate. The soft jazz faded as the DJ, sensing the moment, quietly lowered the volume. "I've been silent for too long," Dad said, his voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. He looked directly at me, and for the first time in years I saw warmth in his eyes. Not disappointment, not indifference, but genuine pride. Susan and Amanda hadn't noticed. They were too busy exchanging worried glances. 10 years ago, Dad continued, I remarried, hoping to give my daughters a complete family. He paused, surveying the room. I've spent the last decade observing what that family has become. William, this isn't the time. Susan started to rise. Sit. One word. She sat. The power dynamic in the room shifted visibly. Board members who'd been casually socializing now watched with laser focus. This wasn't a birthday toast. It was something else entirely. In business, Dad said, we often test potential successors without their knowledge. We watch how they handle pressure, adversity, and, most importantly, betrayal. My heart started racing. Amanda's phone clattered onto the table as her hands began trembling. Some people, Dad's eyes moved to Susan, believe power comes from taking, from manipulation, from crushing those they perceive as weak. He pulled out his own phone, swiping to something on the screen. Others understand that true strength is restraint, patience, documentation. That last word made Susan flinch. Michael, Dad called out. I believe it's time. Michael stood again, picking up the portfolio. With your permission, Mr. Johnson, I should note that everyone in this room is about to become a witness to legal proceedings. The ballroom erupted in whispers. Witness legal proceedings at a birthday party? Dad raised his hand for silence. My daughter Emily has something that was stolen from her. Tonight, she gets it back with interest. Before Dad could elaborate, Susan seized control, standing with forced confidence. Since we're sharing family moments, let me tell you about the birthday gift we gave Emily. She gestured to the display screen. Amanda, show them Paris. The screen lit up with photo after photo. Amanda at the Louvre, shopping on the Champs-Élysées, dining at Michelin-starred restaurants. Each image was more extravagant than the last. Some lessons are more expensive than others, Susan announced, her voice carrying over the growing murmurs. Emily needed to learn that hoarding money while family struggles is selfish. So, we taught her about sharing. $25,000, Amanda added, standing beside her mother. That's what real family support looks like. While Emily sat on her savings like Scrooge, I was investing in international connections. The room erupted. Board members gasped. Thomas Bennett's wife covered her mouth. Uncle James actually laughed, thinking it was a joke. You took her money? Someone called out. We redistributed it, Susan corrected, her smile razor-sharp. Emily's too weak to use it properly. Always saving, never living. Someone had to show her that money is meant to be spent. She turned to me, eyes glittering with malice. Consider it tuition for a life lesson, sweetheart. The weak get eaten in this family. Amanda pulled up her banking app, showing the screen to nearby guests. Look, I'm not hiding anything. Yes, I used Emily's cards. Yes, I transferred her savings. She's the family ATM. It's what she's good at. The humiliation was complete, or it would have been if I hadn't noticed something crucial. Michael was recording everything on his phone, legally, with witnesses. So, you admit, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos, in front of everyone here, that you stole $25,000 from my accounts. The room went silent again. Stole? Susan laughed. We taught you a lesson about family. A lesson? I repeated. Michael, did you get that? Every word, Ms. Johnson. Dad stepped forward, and his expression was no longer neutral. It was cold, corporate, the face that had crushed competitors and built an empire. "Now," he said, "let me tell you what lesson you actually taught." Susan doubled down, sensing she was losing control. "Emily needs to learn strength. Look at her. 30, single, no backbone. She'll thank us one day." "Strength isn't always loud," I said quietly. But the microphone Dad had set down was still on, carrying my words. "Oh, please," Amanda scoffed. "You've never fought for anything in your life. You just exist like furniture." Some guests laughed uncomfortably. Others looked appalled. The room was splitting. Those who saw cruelty and those who were entertained by it. "She's right, though," Susan continued, addressing the crowd. "How can someone so passive run a finance department? Amanda has that killer instinct businesses need. Emily just has spreadsheets. Weak people hide behind rules and paperwork." Amanda added, "Strong people take action." Thomas Bennett stood up. "Mrs. Johnson, are you seriously admitting to theft at a public event?" "It's not theft when it's family teaching family," Susan snapped. "Something you'd understand if you knew how real families operate." The insult to Thomas, implying his family wasn't real, was a fatal error. He was our biggest client, and his expression went from concerned to furious. "William," Thomas said coldly, "is this how Johnson Enterprises operates now?" That's when Dad spoke, his voice cutting through everything. "Enough." The single word carried more authority than any shout. Everyone, Susan, Amanda, the guests, even the waitstaff, froze. "You want to discuss family business?" Dad asked Susan. "Let's discuss it. All of it." He turned to the room. 6 months ago, I discovered systematic theft from Johnson Enterprises. Company cards used for personal expenses, fraudulent invoices, embezzlement. Susan's face went white. "William, you can't." "I can. I have. And I will." He nodded to Michael. "Mr. Lee, please present the documentation." Michael opened the portfolio, revealing a stack of papers thick enough to be a small book. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to witness is the legal transfer of complete financial authority of Johnson Enterprises to its rightful guardian." "No," Susan breathed. "No, you wouldn't." Dad looked at her with something almost like pity. "I already did 6 months ago." This is where everything changed. If you're still watching, you're about to witness one of the most satisfying reversals I've ever experienced. But first, what would you have done in my position? Would you have walked out, fought back, or waited like I did? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. And if this story resonates with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support means everything, and knowing you're there listening gives me strength to share these difficult moments. Now, let me show you what real power looks like. Dad walked to the center of the room, his presence commanding absolute attention. "I gave you rope, and you hung yourselves with it for 10 years, he continued, his voice steady and measured. "I've watched my wife and younger daughter treat Emily like she was somehow less than weak, passive, a doormat." He pulled out his phone, connecting it to the display screen. "Let me show you what I've observed." The screen filled with security footage from the company offices. January 15th. Amanda charges $8,000 at Saks Fifth Avenue on the company card, listing it as client entertainment. The client? Her personal trainer. The room gasped. Amanda started to speak, but Dad raised his hand. February 10th. Susan withdraws $15,000 from the emergency fund for a charity gala that never happened. March 3rd. Another $12,000 for business development that went straight to her personal account. Each transaction appeared on screen with supporting documentation: bank statements, forged signatures, falsified invoices. But here's the interesting part, Dad said, his eyes finding mine. Every single one of these thefts was caught and documented by our chief accountant. Emily knew. She filed reports. She followed protocol. And when I told her to wait, to be patient, she did. I felt the room's attention shift to me. The weak daughter suddenly didn't look so weak. You see, Dad continued, Emily wasn't passive. She was building a case. Every transaction you made, Susan, every luxury purchase, every diverted fund, she documented it all. She could have exposed you months ago, but I asked her to wait. Why? Susan's voice cracked. To see how far you'd go, to let you reveal your true nature completely. He paused. And last night, you crossed the final line. You stole from your own family, not from the company, from Emily personally, $25,000. That's not... We were teaching, Amanda stammered. You were committing felony theft, Michael interrupted, which you just confessed to in front of over 100 witnesses. Dad turned back to the screen. The security footage you deleted from Emily's apartment, Susan, it automatically backed up to the cloud. We have you entering with the spare key at 11:47 p.m. We have you accessing her laptop. We have everything. The screen showed grainy but clear footage of Susan at my kitchen table, my laptop open, entering transfer after transfer while Amanda kept watch. You thought you were so clever, Dad said. But you forgot one thing. I didn't build this company by being stupid. And I didn't raise Emily to be weak. I raised her to be patient, strategic, brilliant. He looked at me with undisguised pride. The weak ones were never Emily. It was the two of you, so consumed by greed you couldn't see the trap closing around you. Michael stepped forward, pulling out the first document from the portfolio. This is a power of attorney for financial affairs, executed 6 months ago, granting Emily Johnson complete authority over all Johnson Enterprises financial decisions. The papers were signed 6 months ago. You've been stealing from your own sister's company. Susan stumbled backward. That's not possible. I would have known. You were too busy stealing to notice, Michael continued, producing another document. This is the board resolution, unanimously approved, appointing Emily Johnson as Chief Financial Officer with full executive powers, effective immediately upon any breach of fiduciary duty by current family members. He held up a third document. And this is the criminal complaint we're prepared to file Monday morning if full restitution isn't made within 48 hours. The room was absolutely silent. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving, frozen by the magnitude of what they were witnessing. Every transaction over $1,000, Michael announced, requires Emily's signature as of 6 months ago. Every single purchase you made, Susan, every transfer, every withdrawal, all unauthorized, all criminal. Amanda's phone clattered to the floor. But I'm family. So is Emily, Dad said coldly. Yet that didn't stop you from robbing her. Michael pulled out his tablet showing bank statements. As of this moment, all accounts linked to Susan and Amanda Johnson have been frozen pending investigation. The forensic audit is already underway. You can't do this, Susan shrieked. I'm your wife, and you've been embezzling from our company for 3 years, Dad replied. The prenuptial agreement you signed, remember that? Specifically states that any criminal activity voids all financial claims. Thomas Bennett stood up slowly. William, Emily, on behalf of Bennett Enterprises, I want to state publicly that we have complete confidence in your leadership and integrity. In fact, we'd like to increase our contract by 40%, effective immediately. Other business partners began standing one by one, declaring their support. The tide hadn't just turned, it had become a tsunami. The $25,000 you stole from Emily's personal accounts, Michael continued, is due in full within 48 hours. The $347,000 you've embezzled from Johnson Enterprises over 3 years is subject to a separate criminal investigation. 300? Amanda couldn't even finish the number. Did you think we weren't watching? I finally stood, my voice calm and clear. Every shopping spree, every business trip, every diverted payment, I documented it all. I gave you chance after chance to stop. But you were right about one thing, Susan. Some lessons are expensive. The display screen changed to show a single document, the new corporate structure of Johnson Enterprises. At the top, as CEO, William Johnson. Directly beneath, as CFO with full financial authority, Emily Johnson. Susan and Amanda weren't even on the chart. I stood up fully, my voice steady and professional. The room held its breath as I spoke. You have 48 hours. The clock starts now. Emily, please, Amanda started. 48 hours to return the $25,000 you stole from my personal accounts, I continued, not acknowledging her interruption. This is non-negotiable. Susan tried to approach me, but Michael stepped between us. Mrs. Johnson, I'd advise against any contact that could be construed as intimidation. Additionally, I said, pulling out my phone to check the time, it's now 8:47 p.m. on Saturday. You have until 8:47 p.m. Monday to provide a full accounting of all company funds you've misappropriated. Every receipt, every transaction, every penny. We can't possibly, Susan protested. Then I suggest you start immediately. My tone was calm, professional, the voice I used in board meetings. Michael has the forensic audit preliminary report. We know the amount down to the cent. Any discrepancy between what you report and what we've found will be considered additional fraud. Amanda was crying now, mascara streaming down her cheeks. Emily, I'm your sister. Yes, I agreed. And you burned my credit card, stole my savings, and humiliated me in front of everyone. Family doesn't make you immune to consequences. Mr. Lee, I turned to Michael, please ensure they receive the formal notice of account freezing and the terms of restitution already prepared. Michael handed them each an envelope. You'll also find the contact information for the criminal attorney I'd recommend you retain. The room was so quiet you could hear Susan's sharp intake of breath as she opened her envelope. One more thing, I added. Your corporate credit cards were canceled as of noon today. Your key cards to Johnson Enterprises offices have been deactivated. Your company vehicles need to be returned by Monday morning. My car? Amanda gasped. The company's car, I corrected, which you've been using for personal purposes in violation of policy. Susan fell to her knees, actually grabbing my dress. Emily, please, we're family. You can't do this. My kindness was never weakness. Your cruelty was. I stepped back, removing her hands from my dress with quiet dignity. We can talk about this, she pleaded. Work something out. William, tell her. I'm done telling Emily anything, Dad said firmly. She's the CFO. These are her decisions. Amanda tried a different approach, her voice shifting to wounded. So, this is it? You're destroying your own family? Is that what you want? I'm not destroying anything, I replied evenly. I'm setting boundaries. You're experiencing consequences. There's a difference. Please, Susan begged, mascara running like black rivers. Let's discuss this privately. Not here, not like this. You chose the venue when you decided to humiliate me publicly, I reminded her. You invited all these witnesses to what you thought would be my degradation. Now, they've witnessed something else entirely. Michael stepped forward. Ms. Johnson, shall we proceed with the criminal filing? I looked at Susan and Amanda, both pale and shaking. That depends on them. Full restitution in 48 hours, and I'll consider it a civil matter. 1 minute late, $1 short, and it becomes criminal. But where will we live? Amanda wailed. How will we? The same way I would have if you'd succeeded in destroying me, I said. You'll figure it out. You're strong, remember? You have that killer instinct. Dad moved to stand beside me, his hand briefly touching my shoulder in support. I believe this party is over. Susan and Amanda stood there frozen, as if unable to process that their world had just collapsed. Leave, Dad said quietly. Now. They stumbled toward the exit, Susan turning back once as if to speak, then thinking better of it. The ballroom doors had barely closed behind them when the room erupted. Not in chaos, but in something unexpected. Applause. It started with Thomas Bennett, slow and deliberate, then spread through the entire gathering. We always knew you were the strong one, Thomas said, approaching with his wife. Your father chose his successor wisely. Within minutes, I was surrounded by board members and business partners, each expressing support and, more importantly, concrete business proposals. 3 new contracts were verbally agreed upon before the waiters even cleared the appetizers. Emily, Sarah Nguyen from Nguyen Technologies touched my arm. That restructuring model you proposed last quarter, we're ready to implement it. Full partnership. My phone buzzed with notifications, emails from the accounting team at Johnson Enterprises. Standing behind you 100%, read one. Finally, read another. About damn time. From our senior auditor who'd helped me document everything. Dad stood beside me as I fielded congratulations and business offers. 23 years ago, your mother told me something before she died, he said quietly, so only I could hear. She said, Emily has my strength. The quiet kind that moves mountains when nobody's watching. She was right. Why didn't you tell me about the power of attorney? I asked. Because you needed to choose your moment, not mine. Yours. He smiled. And you chose perfectly. Michael approached with his tablet. The freeze on their accounts is confirmed. Also, building security just reported that Amanda tried to enter the office, probably to destroy evidence. She was denied access. Of course she did. I sighed. Can you ensure all company property is secured? Already done. I also took the liberty of having their desks cleared and boxed. Everything is in legal holding. Through the tall windows I could see Susan and Amanda in the parking lot. Susan was on her phone, probably calling her lawyer. Amanda was kicking the tire of her Mercedes, the one she'd have to return Monday. Ms. Johnson? A waiter appeared with a new champagne glass from Mr. Bennett's table. They'd like to make a proper birthday toast. For the first time all evening, I genuinely smiled. Tell them I'd be honored. 6 weeks later, I sat in my new office, the CFO suite that had been mysteriously under renovation for 3 years, while Susan tried to claim it. The view overlooked Seattle, and my desk held a small framed photo from that birthday night, Dad and me standing together after everyone else had left. Success is the best response to those who doubted you. The restitution had come through at 8:43 p.m. that Monday, 4 minutes before the deadline. Amanda had sold her Mercedes, her designer wardrobe, and the jewelry she'd bought with stolen funds. The $25,000 was returned in full, plus $3,000 in overdraft fees and interest. Susan had to liquidate her secret investment account, the one she'd been funding with embezzled money. The divorce papers were filed within 2 weeks. Dad offered her a modest settlement if she signed a non-disclosure agreement and relinquished all claims to Johnson Enterprises. She signed. The company audit revealed more than we'd initially found. Almost $400,000 diverted over 3 years through elaborate schemes. Some of it was recovered. The rest became a very expensive lesson in trust. Under my financial leadership, Johnson Enterprises grew 40% in the first quarter. The restructuring I'd proposed, but Susan had blocked, was finally implemented, saving us $2 million annually. Thomas Bennett's increased contract alone brought in $10 million in new revenue. Amanda had to get a job, her first real job at 26. She was working as a junior sales associate at a department store, selling the same designer goods she used to buy with my money. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Susan moved back to her mother's house in Boise, Idaho. The last I heard, she was trying to start a consulting firm for women entrepreneurs. Nobody was hiring her. "Any regrets?" Dad asked during our weekly lunch. "No," I said honestly. I gave them every opportunity to be different. They chose who they wanted to be. "And you chose who you wanted to be," he replied. "Your mother would be proud." My credit score had recovered. The house I'd been saving for. I bought it last week with cash, thanks to my CFO bonus. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success earned honestly and defended fiercely. Looking back, I learned something vital about strength and boundaries that I wish I'd understood years earlier. Boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to respect. For too long, I believed that being kind meant having no limits, that family meant accepting any treatment, that love required endless sacrifice. But real love, the kind that builds rather than destroys, requires boundaries. It requires saying, "This far and no further." My silence hadn't been weakness, though they'd mistaken it for that. It had been strategic patience, gathering evidence while they revealed their true nature. Every insult I absorbed, every theft I documented, every humiliation I endured became a brick in the legal case that would protect not just me, but the company our family built. The most powerful lesson: restraint isn't the same as surrender. I'd restrained myself from petty retaliation, from emotional outbursts, from giving them ammunition to use against me, but I never surrendered my self-worth or my rights. Some people asked if I felt guilty about Susan and Amanda's downfall. The answer was always no. I didn't push them off the cliff. I simply stopped being their safety net while they jumped. Setting boundaries with family is perhaps the hardest thing we ever do. We're taught that blood means unconditional acceptance, but that's how abuse thrives. Real family, chosen or biological, respects your boundaries because they respect you. Dad and I grew closer after that night. Without Susan's toxic influence, we could finally have real conversations. He shared stories about Mom I'd never heard, about her quiet strength and fierce protection of what mattered. "You're just like her," he told me one evening. "She never started fights, but she always finished them." Now I understand what he meant. Finishing fights doesn't mean destroying people. It means ending the cycle of abuse professionally and permanently. A year later, our family looked completely different, smaller but stronger, built on respect rather than manipulation. Sometimes, the best birthday gift is the truth. Amanda reached out 6 months after that night, not for money, but with a genuine apology. She was in therapy, working through why she'd felt entitled to take what wasn't hers. I didn't welcome her back with open arms, but I didn't shut the door completely either. Redemption is possible, but trust must be earned. "I thought being strong meant taking whatever I wanted," she admitted during coffee she paid for with her own earned money. "I never realized that real strength is building something yourself." Susan never apologized. Her pride wouldn't let her. The last update I got from Dad's lawyer was that she'd remarried, another wealthy businessman. I wished him luck. He'd need it. Dad semi-retired, keeping the CEO title but delegating most operations to me. We'd have lunch every Thursday, discussing business, but also life, memories of Mom, and plans for Johnson Enterprises' future. The company thrived under transparent leadership. Employees who'd been afraid to report irregularities now came forward freely. We implemented new controls, better oversight, and, most importantly, a culture where integrity mattered more than connections. My 31st birthday was a quiet dinner with Dad, a few close friends, and Michael Lee, who'd become like family. No grand ballroom, no 100 guests, no drama, just people who genuinely cared about me, not what they could take from me. Any words of wisdom for your 31st year? Dad asked, raising his glass. Yes, I smiled. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. When they take from you, bill them. And when they underestimate you, let them. Right until the moment you don't. The quiet ones often do hold the most power. We just use it differently. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or taken advantage of by people who should protect you, I want you to know your patience isn't weakness. It's power waiting for the right moment. What boundaries do you need to set in your life? Share your thoughts below. If this story helped you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. And remember, the quiet ones often hold the most power. See you in the next one.